On this episode, I still think it is entirely possible that Amy Bradley fell off that ship one way or another, and that's the end of the story.
Put it this way, I don't think it was an accident. I think that was my biggest takeaway. Like, I don't think that woman fell off the boat.
Amy goes missing, and this guy, Alastair Douglas, becomes primary suspect number one. What does yellow mean to you when you call somebody yellow?
It would mean they're a coward.
Do you think Amy Bradley's still alive?
Raise your glass to mysteries, cocktails and conspiracies. Dive into these histories, cocktails and conspiracies. Raise your glass to mysteries, cocktails and conspiracies. Uncover those anomalies, cocktails and conspiracies.
Tired of dragging around that clunky old grill to every tailgate or campsite? Hitchfire has your back. Literally. Their rugged hitch-mounted grills are built for adventure. Just swing it out, fire it up, and get cooking anywhere your vehicle takes you. And I've got a code to hook you up. Use Shane-Game-Day-15 at checkout for 15% off your entire order. Head to hitchfire.com and upgrade your outdoor game. You can also use the QR code on your screen now. Hitchfire, built to burn wherever you roam. Picture this: a luxury cruise ship drifting through the Caribbean, a floating city lit against the velvet black of the early morning sea. On board, over 2,000 souls, each wrapped in their own dreams. But among them is a 23-year-old woman named Amy Lynn Bradley. One moment, she's flesh and blood, laughing on the dance floor, breathing in the salt air. And the next, she's gone. No scream, no splash, no sign she was ever there at all. In the hours that follow, the ship carries on. Breakfast is served, ports are reached, itineraries continue. But whispers travel faster than the tide. Sightings in strange places, faces and shadows, and an unsettling possibility that Amy didn't fall into the sea. She was pulled into another world entirely. A world without windows or doors, where freedom is an illusion. You're traveling through another dimension, not of water or wind, but of fear and unanswered questions. A journey into a place where the missing are not always lost, and the truth is a port that may never be reached. This is the case of Amy Bradley. Good morning, good evening, wherever you may be, whether you're tuning in across the nation or around the world. My name is Shane Skwarek, here with the maestro of mischief, Mr. Tim Philipps. We are your conspiracy realists. Cheers to another episode of Cocktails and Conspiracies.
Cheers, buddy.
You are almost tapped out, and we are just beginning. I'm a little concerned.
Be almost tapped out? I'm on like work vacation right now. I am RTR ready. Oh, well, it's because I got started before you.
It's tapped.
You kidding me?
It's tapped. It's ready to go.
Okay, we're good.
Well, tonight, because we get limited tags for it anyway, I am going with a classic that I probably should have done in the inverse here, but I've got a muddled watermelon lemonade, which is outstanding with a little Wheatley, so good I drink it with muddled watermelon lemonade cocktail here for CNC.
It's a good looking drink. I mean, I would say somebody else made that. I would look at that and go, you didn't make that. You didn't make that beverage.
I 100% made it. However, my beautiful wife actually made me one yesterday. As we record this, I celebrated my birthday. After we got home from our dinner, she said, "You want a cocktail?" And I said, "Sure, only if it's a specialty one." And she mocked this up. It was outstanding. She actually had the watermelon on the top because she's a better bartender, or she's a good bartender. But she had the watermelon on top, which makes it a lot better drinking scenario. So this will be a little bit of a struggle for me. I shouldn't have put the watermelon on the bottom, but we live and learn.
I knew without a shadow of a doubt that your wife had something to do with that drink at some point in time.
She did make it. I gave her the idea. I said I wanted some watermelon in there, but she did this little watermelon lemonade with a little splash of club soda. I'm good with coming up with the ideas. She's good at really building the drink.
You're good with coming up with the names. You come up with good names for your
what
drinks.
names.
Like at the Speakeasy, whenever
I
you have an
always
event,
overthink the names.
you always
Yes.
have a good name. I enjoy it. I think it adds a little, just a little different kind of element to the party. I enjoy those. I usually don't drink them, but I enjoy the names.
That's it. It's all about the names. It's all about the marketing and the branding.
That's all it comes down to.
So tonight we're going to talk about, I guess, really a story, if you will, that has completely taken over social media and taken over Netflix. The case of Amy Bradley, which I had checked out that documentary, I think like probably the day or two after it dropped, just by happenstance. I was scrolling through Netflix looking for something to watch. It popped up. I'm always good for like a good lost person's case. Figured to be a cheesy one. You know, the name of the documentary is, I think quite literally, Where is Amy Bradley? Is that right? Or Amy Bradley is Missing, right?
Something like that.
Bradley.
Her name's in it, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, Amy Bradley is Missing, right there. Simple and easy. I think it's 3 episodes long. Figured to be kind of cheesy as it goes.
Easy watch.
But I got to tell you, I got hooked. I immediately shot you a message, told you to watch it, and I feel like you binged it like the next day.
I binged it. Dude, it might have been that night. Like, I think we were bullshitting. We talked about it, and then I binged the entire thing that night. Like, I couldn't stop watching it.
Super easy watch.
I'm a big binger anyway, but they're over an hour long each, and I was up to like 3:30 in the morning watching it. I didn't give a shit. I had to finish it. Now, my question for you is, do you remember that story when it was in the news?
I don't at all, actually.
No, I vaguely remember. We were young. I think we were probably between like the ages of like 10 and 13, something like that. So I remember it. I didn't pay attention to the details because I was a kid, so it wasn't something that was important to me at the time. But it was cool just to like, oh yeah, I remember this story. And then to watch the details unfold in the documentary was interesting.
You know, that's the thing about a lot of these stories that we cover that have happened within our lifetime is I actually don't have any recollection at all of a lot of them being in the news. Like, I do, but like it's so faint. And like, you know, you hear people on social media threads and even in the documentary talking about how like they were obsessed with it. It was all over the news constantly. It was, I never have those memories of that. Maybe just because I was so disinterested and like all that stuff seemed so far away to me. I mean, I think you're probably the same, but like I had a very active childhood. Like we were consistently outside. We were doing stuff. Not that I was any sort of organized sports or anything like that. It's not like parents are today where they have like 7 days a week worth of nonsense they have to do. But like back then, I just felt like, right. Yeah, like it's back then it was just your parents said, get out of the house. Like just go do something. Just don't
like
be
I
in the
say
house.
to my son now.
And that's it. Right. So it's like, it wasn't like it is today, right? Where you're so concerned about it. Your parents are always with you. They're always taking you everywhere. It was just leave the house. Don't come back until it's nighttime. And that was it. Yep. And so I really never watched a lot of TV outside of like my main programs.
No, it would have been like my parents would watch, especially my father would watch the news every night. And so, you know, sometimes just kind of like being in the house and sometimes I would sit down and actually watch the news with him. So I'm sure I just kind of heard about it in passing. And again, we were too young. I didn't really pay attention to it.
And, to really care, honestly.
No, exactly.
So for those uninitiated, I'm not going to dive through the whole story here because we're going to kind of unravel some of this as we go through. Obviously, big spoiler alerts if you didn't watch the documentary. We're going to talk about a lot of the theories in here. It's probably not going to spoil the series for you, but it will work on the assumption that you've watched it. For those that haven't and still want to kind of hang around and watch this anyway, again, 3-part Netflix true crime series. And I'm just going to basically read the marketing pitch here for y'all. Recounts the eerie disappearance of 23-year-old Amy Lynn Bradley, who vanishes in the early hours of March 24th, 1998, from the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas while on a family vacation. The documentary itself, made by filmmakers Ari Mark and Phil Lott, it revisits the case through interviews with Amy's family, cruise ship crew, fellow passengers, FBI personnel, retracing her last moments, and kind of examining multiple theories that we're going to dive through a little bit here. What's the biggest takeaway you had after watching that documentary?
Something fishy went on. I would say there's something. Put it this way, I don't think it was an accident. I think that was my biggest takeaway. Like I don't think that woman fell off the boat.
Okay.
right?
I
I
would
think
say-
that she was taken. She's a gone
I
girl.
think she was taken for sure.
Correct.
When we entered that documentary through the first series, and again, we're going to reference this a lot because this is the foundation of most of our knowledge here. I thought Open Shut episode 1 that I cannot even begin to fathom why we're having this 3-part series on this. Girl was drunk, sitting on a balcony with her brother after hours. He went to bed. She was gone the next morning. The table was pulled up against the side of the balcony. Her shoes were still there. I mean, we can't say it here because that'll give us another thing to get marked off, but went overboard either intentionally or unintentionally, case closed. And I immediately pegged the family as a little bit of a money grab. I'm like, this whole series is going to be a way to build up a bunch of money just so they have it because they can't just come to terms with the fact that this happened. They're going to make up some outlandish story about this documentary. Like, the whole thing's just going to be a waste of time after this. Unequivocally, this is the solution here. Did you have any of that same feeling, or was it
100%? I
intrigued?
mean,
Okay.
like the first half hour into the first episode, I'm like, all right, she fell off the boat, right? Like, it's obvious. Like, what else could have? Because when you hear about somebody disappearing off of a cruise,
yeah,
I mean, one can't disappear off of a cruise unless you make yourself disappear in some way, shape, or form, whether intentional or unintentional. So, where else could she have possibly gone, right? And
Absolutely.
so, 100%, I had that same thought. But as the story continues to unravel, there are some other elements that pop, and you're like, oh, that's kind of weird.
And you know, staying on that for a little bit, I don't want to discount this theory altogether, even to this point, even after watching the documentary, even after doing a lot more independent research on this. I still think it is entirely possible that Amy Bradley fell off that ship one way or another, and that's the end of the story.
Absolutely.
A lot of the rest of it does require a little bit of a stretch of imagination, even though there are some interesting points to it. But the evidence against it is very sparing. The fact that she knew how to swim and had previously been a lifeguard, I got to tell you, as a lifeguard myself, if I fell off a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean, I'm probably, number one, if the impact didn't knock me out or knock the wind out of me, if the temperature of the air, the water, which, I mean, you're in the Caribbean, so it's probably warmer, but you're out at the sea, so there's a very high chance it's a lot cooler than most people might think. Those are big factors that are going to impact what you're doing. And then, like, even if you can see land, right? Like, you just had a bender. It might be the middle of the night that you fell. We don't actually know the time. You hit that water. Where are you going? Right? Like, where are you swimming to? You're just going to swim or wade water for how many hours? You know, it's plausible that that's what happened. It's plausible she fell and got sucked into a propeller, you know, and that could have been the end of it. If she didn't just knock herself out from that. And again, like, you're out in the middle of the ocean. This is less likely, but what if a shark came by? What if a whale came by? Any number of sea creatures could have came by and clonked her, or taken advantage. Like, there's a lot of possibility there. So the idea, the expectation that they didn't see her, they didn't hear anything, or that the body didn't wash ashore at any point, that's less likely to me. I realize they weren't that far off the coast at that point, but still, you are far enough where
There's still an open ocean.
you go a mile off the coast, and I've done this before in plenty of lifeguard tournaments and even like in training for them. Go a mile off the coast and tell me how easy it is to get back a mile. Now, imagine that ship's out 8 miles, you know, like, which I think is probably more accurate to where it was. That's a long distance, and well-conditioned swimmers aren't swimming a mile easily. You know, you're still going to look at like maybe like 15-minute swim at a well-conditioned. 8 miles is very impractical, especially if you're not prepared for it. So I'm not ruling the idea out. Let's just make that perfectly clear.
Yeah, look, I totally agree with you. I think the fact that she was a strong swimmer is completely irrelevant because of what you just said, right? You're talking about something that happened in the very early hours, somewhere between the time of like 3 and 6 a.m. So you're talking about the dead of night. If you do fall over, you're in open ocean. It's pitch black out. I mean, look, I could swim pretty damn well. I was never a lifeguard, but I'm a very good swimmer. I'm gonna fucking panic. I am gonna panic. And I always said, if I was in the open ocean and I saw a shark, the shark wouldn't kill me because I'd have a fucking heart attack and I'd die right there and it would just eat my corpse. So my cause of death would not be the shark. It would be the heart attack. So, you know, take that for what it's worth.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally get it. Where the story starts to unravel a little bit, though, is when we start to talk about this guy named Yellow. Alastair, I want to say Williams? What was Alastair's name? Do we remember that off the top of your head?
No, I don't have good recall tonight, buddy.
Man, me neither. And I was just looking at it. Yellow, Alastair, Douglas. Sorry. Name's Alastair Douglas. He plays in one of the bands that are on the cruise ship, and I guess connected with Amy Bradley in one of the nightclubs afterwards. And apparently this was kind of a common thing. There's a lot of talk from the family that the staff was super friendly outwardly towards her. They were taking pictures with her, and they were like, really trying to like jazz it up. That didn't strike me as weird as somebody who's been on a lot of vacations before. And I'm not saying that should be like, superficial or anything here, but when you're at some of these all-inclusive resorts, and that is not what these cruises necessarily are. They're not so all-inclusive.
It's pretty similar, though.
It's very similar. Yeah, you're a captive audience.
The atmosphere, right. The atmosphere is very similar.
Everything is right there. You're building there. I mean, we've both been to Breezes many times before.
Yep.
And they go above and beyond to make you feel very important, because that is quite literally how they make money. I mean, I remember we tipped them $10 under a napkin because they would have gotten in trouble for it, and they were giving us entire bottles of Captain Morgan during spring break when the place was mobbed with college kids. And I remember this one story, I'm sure you remember it too, is like,
oh, I know exactly what you're gonna say.
You know exactly where I'm going. Some kids were at the bar and they asked for 2 Captain and Coke, sort of like that. The guy's like, no more, we're out of Captain. We walk up, we just put our hands up, I don't know, 5, 6, whatever it is, and this guy whips out Captain from underneath and pours the drinks, and the guy's like, you said you don't have any Captain. He's like, I don't have Captain for you. I only have Captain for them. And they reserve the bottles for us. This is off like one $10 tip, right, in the Bahamas. So, again, this is, in fact, this is around that same era. This is probably that 2004, 5 era, 6, 7.
It was a little bit later than the Amy Bradley story, but it's within
like,
10 years.
In terms of like
within a decade
context,
of the time.
Right. Like the costs of things from 98, the dollar from 98 to when we went, call it 2007, that 10-year gap. It's not like the dollar changed much, right? The economic status of down there was probably going to be very similar. So when you're tipping these people or you're communicating with them and they have the idea that you're going to tip them, they're going to go crazy for you. And they're going to really make sure that they go above and beyond, because that $10 to you for a bunch of people that live on these islands that you're going to, that $10 means nothing to you, but that's like a day's salary for some of them. But I'm not, again, not being like a dick. That is true in some cases. So I remember talking to you about this a little bit. That didn't seem odd. Like that I think was maybe a little over embellished in that perception of what the family had, that they were the staff was hyper focusing attention on her. I'm not sure that I believe that.
Yeah, no, look, I look, right, they everybody in the documentary talks about it being a very pretty girl, and look, if your job on the ship is to be an entertainer, okay, and you are a male, and your kind of job is to kind of swoon the women on the ship, and while that may not be like a technical part of your job, you're an entertainer, and it kind of helps get everybody going and up and dancing and whatever it might be. Yeah, maybe you pay a little bit more attention to her because you think she's pretty. Again, up until the point in which we think that there may have been some foul play, that's kind of normal, right? Like I don't see that goes on all the time, and I don't think that there's always necessarily malfeasance behind that.
Yeah. So diving into like the crutch of the story here, and at the risk of really rehashing a lot of what you all know here, Amy goes missing, and this guy Alastair Douglas becomes primary suspect number 1. Ignoring all of the other evidence that's involved here, the thing that struck me the most was his nickname being Yellow. What does yellow mean to you when you call somebody yellow?
It would mean they're a coward.
It would mean they're a coward.
In some
right?
old school terms, in some like 1950 type shit, yeah. Yeah,
is that not the first thing that comes to your mind when you heard them calling him yellow?
I'll be honest, it didn't, but it is, I guess, kind of interesting.
I couldn't get that out of my head the entire time, that this guy was called Yellow. Now, he's not giving him, like, anybody that's got a nickname knows you don't give yourself the nickname. People give it to you, right? And the idea that your friends called you Yellow and you took it, or your family called you Yellow, it just, I don't know, it was a weird negative connotation to me that I had from the get-go. And maybe there is a reason behind that. I'd love to know what that is. But that to me immediately set the marker that, like, this guy's a coward, or this guy's like a scoundrel, right? And everyone around him knows it, and they call him Yellow because he's a scoundrel, like, you yellow-bellied son of a bitch. Right. And so as soon as we start bringing him into the picture here, I'm immediately, my mindset is already fixated. Like, this guy's a scumbag. Going through all of the theories that went on there, ignoring, some of the really outstretched ones. The guy Yellow seems to really be tied into here. He seems to really be connected here. Do you think this guy, well, you already said, you feel like she's gone. Do you think this guy takes her off the boat? How do you think she gets off the boat? How do you think this materializes with Yellow and Amy?
So, if I remember correctly, there were other women that were on the same cruise the night that she disappeared, they were all in a club together, right? As most, and again, we kind of already talked about a cruise being very similar to an all-inclusive resort, right? So anybody that's been on a vacation to an all-inclusive resort or who's been on a cruise, they have, obviously there's a lot of bars, but there's always like a nightclub type bar that are in one of these establishments, right? And so they were all out at the club, not necessarily together, but when you're on a cruise, similar to being in an all-inclusive resort, you kind of get to know people that are there, whether it's through, you get to know them and become friendly and you talk to them, or you just recognize them, right? Because you're in the same small, space for a long period of time and you just recognize people. So I don't recall whether or not these women had stated that they were actually friends with her or had any kind of communication with her, but at the very least they had recognized her. And so after a night out at the club, they're up on like the top deck, and they did state that they saw Amy and this guy Yellow walking by. And so she, or at least according to the testimony of these other two women, that was the last person that Amy was seen with. Now, it gets a little weird because we don't know the exact time that they saw the two individuals, Amy and Yellow. And granted, right, we're talking about after a fucking night out at the club, right? You ask me to remember an exact time? Good luck. Ain't no fucking way that's happening. And so, that's why the whole story as a whole is a little wishy-washy for me, because you're really relying heavily on eyewitness testimony, and that only goes so far. If he was involved, I think that he got her off the boat in one of two ways. Either he convinced her to leave the boat for whatever reason, or he actually physically restrained and concealed her and took her off the boat that way. I think it's far more likely that he convinced her to leave the boat. But you can't rule out the fact that he restrained this person, and then, why am I trying to sound so fucking smart? He fucking tied her up and threw her in a suitcase. Very well could have happened, right?
I mean, that to me has also been like kind of striking, is I don't know that you have the capacity, the time, and the isolation enough to be able to really take somebody off there. One thing, Amy's brother Brad has been super, I mean, he became obviously the sleeper star of the documentary because Bradley, kind of a funny play on his name right there, Bradley. But then, he went right to social media and he started posting constantly and has talked a lot about some other theories. One of the things that came up that was really not talked about in the documentary, where the documentary really kind of missed, is that there's actually an employee exit, right? And it's giant doors, like it's a cargo bay that only employees have access to. So when they say that Amy's missing and they start letting people off the boat because they're in port, they could have actually already left the boat out the back cargo exit because they would have gotten there sooner than the timeline would have allowed for. My inclination, kind of building on what you said, is like, you meet up in the club, and one of the things you do on vacation is you go a little wild. You do some things sometimes that you wouldn't normally do if you're at home. You release some inhibitions. How do you get this girl off the boat? I don't think you're tying her up and throwing her in her suitcase. I don't think you're trying, because all that's got to happen is one person's walking around and sees you, a huge windfall of problems. One person she screams, you're done. Like, it's too hard, even though it's early morning hours, even though there are confines and stuff. I just feel like it's too hard to get away with that successfully. if it's organized crime and this idea that she ends up getting dumped into this like prostitution ring and she's running around now under this new identity, if that is all true, you're assuming that's all true, you can't be sloppy from the start, because if you are, it's easy to get busted. The whole thing goes to shits, and all these cruise ships where you're probably getting these people from isn't going to work. How do you get her off the ship? It's kind of a question.
Yeah,
how would you convince somebody to come off the ship?
I was burping, and so I muted myself so everybody didn't hear me burp. So, look, if you had something that she wanted, right? So I know they talk about this, right? That potentially she wanted drugs. And so if he was a connection to that, that's a very easy way to say, hey, I can get you whatever you want. Come with me. And that could be it.
People want to say that that doesn't happen. Two parts of that. People want to say that there's a lot of talk in the documentary too. You know, Amy's not a drug user, not a drug addict, so on and so forth. All fine and dandy. I get that. I'm not a drug user too. I went to Jamaica. I smoked a joint. I didn't care to do it, but I did it because I was in Jamaica and it was the thing you did. I've seen people do an 8-ball off of a kayak with a person that they've just met.
Oh, we both have.
Yeah, right? What I've also seen is a group of like very sheltered girls from Rutgers get in a car with a bunch of like the locals in a Bohemian resort and go with them to clubs and bars. That is like cardinal sin number one, but you got to remember, these people are wooing the crap out of you. They're putting you up on a pedestal, right? A lot of the times they're from third world countries. They're broke as shit, which is why those $10 tips go so far. And they're acting like they're your best friend and they become the greatest person in the world.
Yeah.
You've seen the movie Forgetting Sarah Marshall, right?
It's one of my favorites. I can't not watch it when it's on.
It's so good. Everyone out there, I'm sure, has seen this, but this is the best example I can use. When Jason Segel's character is sitting at the breakfast buffet and the one Hawaiian waiter guy walks up, gets him like an extra, I don't know, like shooter or whatever it was, like the rum or something like that. He's like, cocktail guy, blah, blah, blah. He's his best friend. Jason Segel loves it. Oh, this is so cool. Later on, he goes on the beach with Mila Kunis. The boyfriend walks up. He's like, no, don't worry. I know him. I'm friends with his buddy. I know him from the hotel. And the guy socks him in the face. He's like, what the hell, man? Like, we were boys. Like, no, this isn't the breakfast buffet. Yeah. That's the mindset. And that's what a lot of these people that are working the ships, I'm sure there's great ones out there, but you got to remember, like, they have other motives. They're trying to survive too. And I'm not justifying this by any means, but they're not who they may appear to be. Their job requires. It's like the old fashioned thing. You could go to a strip club and the stripper like loves me. She wants to be my friend. Like, no, that's her job, is to talk to you. The bartender's job is to talk to you. That is their job. You're paying them money to do it. It's the same thing here. Roundabout way to get back to my point. You create this false sense of security with these people that you think you know, and they turn you on to idea like, hey, do you want to party like the locals? You really want to make this like a trip of a lifetime? I can get you stuff you can't get on here. And so when I think about, how do you get somebody off the ship? If the rest of the story is true, how do you get them off the ship? You nailed it, Tim. You give them something they want. Hey, I can hook you up with some locals. Let's just go check out this really cool beach. We'll get out a little bit early, or maybe we can pick you up, some pot, some other sort of narcotic, specialty, whatever it might be. My buddy's going to be right over here. We'll meet you down to the pier or something like that. Let's just run off the back of the ship real quick. Nobody will catch us. We'll be back by the morning. You can use any of those things, especially now if you're tracking the timeline, right? She's seen with this guy Yellow late at night. We don't really know what the time frame is around that, but we do know that she's back at the room. She's all banged up in the room. Maybe she just knows, like, oh, I'm going to go connect with this guy. Maybe she's just wandering around and runs into him. Don't know. It doesn't really matter, I think, to the story. The fact that she does encounter him at some point, already intoxicated to some degree. You're already not thinking clearly, and maybe you want the party to go on. We've all been guilty of that. You've had one too many. Nothing good happens after midnight. Double me.
King.
And you want to keep going because it's vacation. I think it's entirely plausible. And then when you start to factor in the other aspects of her life, her coming out or not coming out, I guess maybe coming out to her parents a little bit, that's an impact there too. But I think that was over exaggerated in the documentary a little bit. She actually did have a boyfriend when she was on that trip, which wasn't really discussed too much.
I thought she had a girlfriend when she was on that trip. Sure, was a boyfriend?
Yeah, so she actually had a boyfriend when she was on the trip, and she had broken up with the girlfriend prior to and was writing letters back and forth to her. So the
Right, I
documentary
recall
does an
that.
interesting thing of like painting her as this like closet lesbian that just came out and that was like brokenhearted. It's not the case. And in other media that I've looked, including some testimony by Brad and some other interviews, she was actually dating a guy. And the letters that were written back and forth to this girl were to an ex, and she had a communication going back with her. But she was bisexual, right? Like for all intents and purposes, she was going both ways. Maybe she was brokenhearted to the person. Maybe she was reconnecting with her, and that fuels the idea that maybe she was going to rekindle it. Maybe there was trouble with the boyfriend. Don't know. Again, I don't think it's entirely relevant, but I guess maybe I retract that. Maybe it is somewhat relevant because maybe she was just confused about what direction she wanted to go, no pun intended, and that just kind of fueled into it, like the emotion of it, wanting to just kind of cut loose on this last vacation. People do a lot of crazy stuff on vacation. They release their inhibitions quite literally because you're in another foreign land. You feel like you have this false sense of security because you're on this ship and you paid a bunch of money to be there. As soon as you step off that, though, the world changes.
Right. You feel safe, right? It's you feel like you know these people. That's that sense of safety, but in reality, you don't know those fucking people from a hole in the wall. I mean, it's you really truly don't. And I want to make one more point going back to the whole drug thing that I this is something I thought about when I was watching it when everybody claimed, "Oh no, she wasn't a drug user." Well, let's just think about the time frame that we're talking about. We're talking about the 90s, okay? In the 90s, pot was illegal in every state. Every single state, pot was illegal. It was still the most innocuous drug, right? Like, pot's not fucking harmful. Like, okay, yeah, you're gonna gain some fucking weight probably because you're gonna eat late at night, right? Like, pot's not, in my opinion, it's not. So, like, everybody hears drug and they automatically go to, she wanted coke, she wanted ecstasy, she wanted whatever, name the drug, right? But guys, like, it's very, very plausible she wanted to smoke a fucking joint. I mean, she was a kid in the 90s. That's not a far stretch, right? So, like, everybody's mind immediately goes to the hardest drug you could possibly imagine. Maybe the girl just wanted some fucking weed, man. That's it. Very, very, very possible.
It's very possible. It's very possible. Yeah. Interesting, man. Very interesting. There is a lot of discussion too in threads about the case of Natalie Holloway. Are you familiar with that?
I know the name. If you give me some backfill there, I'm sure I'll remember it immediately.
So Natalie was the blonde that was down in Aruba.
Aruba, okay.
Yeah.
I thought it
she
was
ended up
Mexico,
going
but yeah.
missing. Yeah, yeah. And, that case is, her body's still never been found. That case is on and off. The guy was arrested, then released.
I was going to say,
arrested
she was on
again.
vacation with a boyfriend, right?
No, she was on vacation
wasn't.
with friends.
Got
she
it.
met some guy there, and
I knew there was a guy involved in the story.
Drugged her, kidnapped her. They said that they threw her overboard. That was later retracted, and they buried her somewhere instead. Like, there's been a whole bunch of stories down there. So there's a lot of likeness to that story with Natalie Holloway. That one I do remember pretty distinctly because I think that happened close to the time that we were going down there, to the Bahamas at least, on spring break. It's not the first time that people have gone missing, not only in Caribbean islands, because again, you're going to places where there is a lot of massive poverty and where trafficking becomes kind of, I don't want to say a way of life, but it is very common to happen down there.
Well, look, it's an easy way. It's an easy and quick way to make a lot of money for them.
For them. Right. Beyond that though, like, you kind of ruined my thought there. Hold on. My train of thought. No, it's fine. It's fine. What I was getting at is just like you're going to these places again, going back to that like false sense of security. That's where I was going with it. So outside of the fact that you're going to these impoverished lands, there's also a lot of incentive for these locales to cover this shit up. They don't want you to know about, or they don't want you to think that somebody was robbed or hurt or, God forbid, kidnapped or murdered there, because if they do, it ruins everything. Like the Royal Caribbean, I mean, it hasn't hurt their business now, but there was a lot of those types of things back in the day, and they just brushed under the rug, or they give people tons of money to shut them up. You saw it happen in the Dominican for that brief period of time where people were getting sick and legitimately dying from like drinks that were being served at the resort, or getting these like terrible illnesses. And they just, I mean, completely covered it up. You can never in these countries get law enforcement to work with you. They're so corrupt. But again, it's the governments too. And that's what really happened in the Aruba case. That kid wasn't even from Aruba. He was from one of the other islands there. But father was very well connected and just buried the shit out of it, paid off all the cops that were involved. And that later comes out in one of the other documentaries, how like somebody else basically ratted him out, just couldn't live with his conscience. And they just basically swept it under the rug. Like the cops were called, and apparently they were involved in burying this whole thing and hiding it. Because what does that then do to the tourism, which these little islands are based so much off of? So the idea now that Amy comes off this ship and she's taken, I don't think surprises too many people. I think they think that it's a possibility and perhaps maybe know it. I think maybe they care to a degree, but at the same token, like they all know that if this gets out, there are bigger problems. And so to mask it and hide it under the rug, it adds up, man. I mean, it doesn't seem that far-fetched to believe that.
Dude, 100%, right? And dude, look, we live in an area, right? Or at least very close to areas where people vacation, right? We live at the Jersey Shore, right? We have all the Bennies that come down. We have the Shoobies that come in from PA. So when you're talking about the coast of where we live, it is heavily, the economics in those specific shore towns are heavily, heavily reliant on what? On tourism, right? And so, I shouldn't say wacky example, but I'm sure you see this all the time, right? You know, so-and-so beach is closed down due to, and you know why they close it down, everybody? Fecal matter in the water, right? You know, the DEA does testing all the time, and they'll say, this beach is closed due to fecal matter, which to me never makes any fucking sense, because if there's shit floating in the water in Belmar, how's it not in Point Pleasant? They're right next to each other. It's all water, right? Doesn't make any sense. Point being, let's just say the whole Jersey Shore was covered in shit, okay? And you couldn't swim on any of the beaches. What would that do to the economy of all those shore towns? It would absolutely tank. And so to your point, these islands, that is their, like 99% of their economy comes from tourism. They don't create anything, they don't import anything, they don't export anything. It is all tourism. So if you've got some shady shit happening and people are disappearing in your town, you better believe they're gonna fucking sweep that shit under the rug.
After the documentary comes out, this is the beauty of social media. There's somebody that posts up another picture that they took 2 weeks after Amy Bradley actually went missing on the same cruise ship. And I'm going to share that picture with you right now. This is from Twitter.
I haven't seen
I'm
this
sure
one.
they posted on like TikTok or something like that, but you're going to like this one.
Picture 7/31/25, Amy Bradley case.
Okay, so this young girl sees the documentary. She posts this picture she took at 15 years old with Yellow.
I was going to say, that's that guy,
Amy's
Yellow.
disappearance. That's Yellow.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And she basically says in her captions, now this is like screen capped, then screen capped again, and who knows where this original one actually lives now. But that Yellow was hitting on her and asking her to try to leave the ship, to do whatever it is. I'd love to find this original post. I don't really know how to find it at this point. I didn't really feel like digging back too deep, but I thought this was an interesting one, and kind of just like adds to that whole, you know, lore that it's a little creepiness going on. And again, like having been to some of these islands, I see it all. I mean, I've literally seen it with my own eyes. Like the workers are trying to get them to leave, and you'll often see like some of the older guys or some of the more grounded ones that you tell aren't like sleazy, or some of the girls like, you do not go with them, do not do that. And they'll even say to the guys that think they're gonna like score drugs and shit, like they're gonna take advantage of you. Their friends will kick the shit out of you, like they'll rob you, they'll get you. You know, there's a lot of issues. They always try to give you club coupons so you can go to clubs for free, and then you know they're shitholes, and they're trying to get you. They're trying to. There's a motive behind it all the time.
Dude, I wouldn't even recommend, you know, when you go to an all-inclusive resort, and you could book an excursion and it's always off-site, don't even fucking do those, man. I mean, I just, you know, some of these, I mean, we're talking about impoverished nations, essentially third world countries. I don't know. I just don't feel comfortable with that stuff. And I don't think the hitting on the women thing isn't off to me, right? First and foremost, let's just take the fact that it's kind of part of his job, and I know any fucking feminist listening to this is gonna get pissed at me. It is what it is, man. Like, men flirt with women. And guess what? Women flirt with men too, right? So it goes fucking both ways. So men flirt with women. Granted, I remember, I think you just said that girl was very young, so it sounded like that was an illegal flirting, if you want to call it that. So I necessarily wouldn't condone that. But look, it's not out of the realm of possibility that that guy just wanted to fuck these girls, right? Like, that's very much could be it. What gets me is, why are you coercing these girls to leave the resort, to leave the ship, right? Like, you had anything that you wanted, any kind of sexual gratification that you wanted to get from this person, you could do it right there on the ship. You could do it in the resort. You don't need to leave. And to me, that's the weird part about it, you know?
I wanted to bring up one other post, and we're going to be reluctant with the way we read this because there's certain things in here we can't say for certain reasons. But Brad Bradley, the brother, posted this, and I thought it was interesting. And we had communicated with him a little bit and tried to get him on the show. I reached out to him right after this documentary dropped, but I watched his feed grow and double every day with his followers. And he was very much responsive right out of the gate. And then he got bombarded with interview requests for shows that are much bigger to us. But he started talking to me about this and then posted this up online and asked me to read it. And I think it's worth sharing. Again, I'm going to be a little reluctant. It's kind of long, but I am going to read it for those that aren't watching because I think it's important here. Brad Bradley posts, the night before Amy disappeared, during the pool party, we went to the dance club. Amy was talking to two black women in matching uniforms off to the side for close to an hour. Interesting amount of time. The uniforms were not Royal Caribbean uniforms. They had on navy blue knee-length skirts and a lighter blue button-up Oxford shirt. Remember that. My parents walked over to them to let them know that Amy was going to bed, or to let Amy know they were going to bed. When they walked up, the two ladies who had appeared very friendly during the conversation with Amy did not speak or introduce themselves to the parents. They don't know who the women are. The FBI says they are aware of who they are, but never shared any information about them. The next afternoon, they got off the ship to stay in a hotel in the canal in case Amy were to be found in the water, which she was not. So, to what we were talking about before, falling off the ship, they did wait on the island to see if she would surface. Later on that night, they were in the hotel room on Curacao, obviously not in good shape. My mom asked the president of my dad's company, who had gotten off the ship with his wife, to help them to find a priest who can come pray with them. They were not able to find a priest. Around midnight, two Tom Cruise-ology officers knocked on their door and introduced themselves as officers from the ship's Freewinds. The Freewinds is the Tom Cruise-ology's Sea Org ship, which is headquartered in Curacao, which you can look up and independently verify. They told us that they assist people who are grieving and suffering loss through various methods. They explained their ways and went on to ask very specific things. What does she smoke? What are her favorite cigarettes? Does she drink? What's her favorite beer? Her favorite snacks? Went on for a while, and we went along, assuming it was a way to process our grief. The interaction or interview went on for about an hour until his dad asked them to leave. They invited them aboard their ship for whatever reason, but they declined. Brad is not claiming that he knows they were involved, but they left their room having learned a lot of specific details about Amy's favorite things, which in retrospect has been suspicious to him ever since. He goes on to talk about a lot of research that he did on the Tom Cruise-ology, the Freewinds, the Sea Org, and so forth. I know you're cackling over there. And the staff on the Freewinds matched what those ladies that Amy was talking to were wearing. I'm not going to go through the rest of this stuff because it kind of goes a little bit further, but it kind of ties in a lot of the other sightings. The one in the bathroom in Barbados where that woman kind of encountered who she thought was Amy, which to me was one of the most traumatizing ones. I don't blame that woman at all for walking out. Yes. Very traumatizing. But there is a port there where the Freewind Sea Org also goes. There's a whole nother wing of conspiracies that tie that Tom Cruise-ology into harassment and disappearances and just a bevy of other things. Obviously, you can't verify any of it because they handle a lot of things in house, but people that have kind of come out of that ology have spoken up. As Leah Remini, I think, is one of the more famous ones that came out with that docuseries, and really was very vocal about it. Other people have just ended up, face down in a puddle, and moved on from this world because of it. I don't know that I hold a lot to that theory, and tying them together. I think sometimes that those things are just ways to kind of grab people and take advantage of them. But I don't rule it out entirely, because oftentimes when you have these trafficking type schemes, it's not just a bunch of hoodlums. It's not just a bunch of yellows that are running around conducting these things. Those guys are the hustlers, right? They're the ground level guys. It's often got to be run by somebody at the top. And if we talk back to, like, I'm trying to think of the words I can't say to get this complete. Our Bigfoot one got disproved.
Got the fuck out of here.
Yeah, of shocking content.
Bigfoot
of all things. I don't know what we said in that, but we had
Very shocking.
we got good views on it. Otherwise,
Shocking, everybody. Bigfoot.
I don't know. What's the way to say this? If you subscribe to some of the other ideas that have happened now with, like, the Puff Daddy and the Jeffrey Epstein, right? These are high level officials that have a ton of power and a ton of connections with a ton of famous friends that are all technically being implicated or suspicion to be implicated. Where are they finding these girls? It's the low level people that are going and getting them. And so when you look at the things like what we think might have happened here with Amy Lynn Bradley, that strikes me as being tied into a bigger scheme. Now, I'm not saying it's the same types of people. It may not be like the P. Diddy's involved. It could just be like some sort of a cartel or something that's working out of South America, which is probably more likely in this case. But there's always some sort of money involved in it. And so I don't want to rule that theory out. It's an interesting one that Brad, in a private conversation, had actually echoed that he really wanted to tug on that string a lot more. Documentary would not touch that, understandably so. But just another little theory to throw at you.
I'll tell you what, it's weird, but to your point, we're talking about weird fucking people, okay? Those people are not normal people. They don't think like normal human beings. And so whether they had an ulterior motive in speaking with her doesn't necessarily mean that they wanted to traffic her. Look, I don't want to beat a dead horse here and just repeat exactly what you said, but look, it's those types of groups have those foot soldiers that go out and recruit other people, right? Because how do they stay in, I'll say power in terms of like their own world? It's by recruiting new members who will do what you want them to do, right? But whether it be for or not for nefarious reasons. So look, it's not a smoking gun, but it is weird, dude. I mean, it's certainly very weird.
It's a weird coincidence. Yeah. I looked up some images of what those uniforms look like. I saw some. You all can look them up yourself. Just type the name into uniforms. It's hard to say for sure because they don't actually have a photo from Amy Lynn Bradley talking to them on the ship. So it's all speculation. It could just be hindsight and kind of filling in some gaps there. Grief does those types of things. But I didn't want to discount that. I wanted to maybe broach that.
No, it's very interesting. Very interesting.
Very, very. Last question or really point I wanted to kind of bring to you is maybe twofold. Do you think Amy Bradley's still alive?
I don't know if she's still alive today, but I think that based upon the information that I have, right, and again, we alluded to this earlier on in the episode, right, and I know you've done a bit more research on this post watching that, but I'll admit that a lot of my knowledge on the subject is from watching that documentary, and you have to take that with a grain of salt. And perfect, I don't want to go off too much of a tangent here, but I brought this up to you the other night, right? Like, I've watched two different documentaries about the Son of Sam. One was called Sons of Sam, and there's a new one out on Netflix. I forget exactly what it's called, and they are drastically different, right? Like, the stories don't match at all. And so you have to take a documentary with a grain of salt because there's a director, there's a producer, and they're telling you their story. That's their story. Doesn't mean it's wrong, but it's their story. And so, based upon all the information that we have, I do believe that she was smuggled, whether willingly or unwillingly, off of that ship. And I think that she was alive for a period of time. Yeah, 100%. I do think that once the story really blew up, for those people that had her, I think for their own well-being, it would have made more sense to make her disappear for good, if you catch my drift. So I don't know if she's still with us today. But I think she was alive for a period of time. What about you?
You think when the story blew up more recently or back in the day?
No. Back in the day, because it started to snowball and eventually had national news coverage. I mean, the FBI was involved at some point, and so, anybody that look, if you're the perpetrator who executed this scheme and you're the one that's holding this person captive, and hey, the FBI is involved. There's news coverage all over the U.S. What's the easiest way to make it go away? You make that person go away.
That's an interesting thought. I'd be curious. I actually wish I knew this thought beforehand, because I'd be curious to look up the differences between when that Unsolved Mysteries episode aired, which really I think brought renewed coverage to it, and all of those sightings all sort of happened. And I guess maybe we can even try to use AI to do that in a little bit here, but
it had to be some time ago, though. I think it was only maybe like 3 to 5 years post her disappearance. I could be way off on that. That's the inclination that I get. Is Unsolved Mysteries even still on? Like, did they make... I don't think so.
Well, the Unsolved Mysteries episode happened back around her disappearance, which actually is one of the things that brought in the woman that saw her in the bathroom, the Navy sailor that saw her as a prostitute, which, by the way, like, everyone's like busting that guy's balls for not speaking out sooner. He clearly shouldn't have been there, and it was probably embarrassing nonetheless to do that. I don't really blame him for not saying that any sooner than he did, but... And you never know. And in fairness, again, you never know what these people are saying. They want money, right? Like you're dealing with people that look like they're drug addicted. Episode airing. I'm gonna see if I can look that up real quick. But I'm curious on the timeline of that, because the initial case, whenever somebody's going to go missing, there's going to be people involved, especially internationally. You're going to get the FBI involved. You're going to get federal authorities there. So, Amy Bradley disappears March 24th, 1998. The unverified sightings are reported between the 90s and the 2000s, and Unsolved Mysteries airs in 1999. So there...
Oh, so it was a year later. Okay.
Yeah, so there seems to be sightings into the 2000s. Grainy photos were sent to her family in 2005, suspected to be her, is the latest one I can see. So there's a plausibility that she was there. I think when you're kind of buried within that underground... I don't think it really matters too much to those people there, because, it's one person in a world of billions. What I'm most curious about, or maybe not curious, what I most hypothesize about is, you get entrenched in this lifestyle, you're degraded, your life is stripped away. There's probably tons of threats against your family, and you're scared. You end up getting drug addicted because that's what they're going to do. You're probably beaten to death.
100%.
I think a lot of people ask, why wouldn't she leave there? Why wouldn't she run away? And I think that adds to it. But then there's also the topic of her maybe have had a child, and that could potentially be the skeleton key there. And for those that don't have children, often say, well, just get up and leave. It's probably a child based on an illegitimate marriage or an illegitimate child. It wasn't intentional, right? I think perhaps, because there was discussion on it. I think it was that one of those cases. I don't know if it was the bathroom sighting, maybe. She said, when am I going to see her, blah, blah, blah. So obviously they knew that they had the child. But I tend to wonder if perhaps they don't intentionally try to get her pregnant early on, because now you have something holding her there. And, we're not mothers, but we both have children. And that bond that you create is very different. And I imagine it's even stronger for a mother. Not all mothers. Some of them decide they want to dump off their kids in garbage cans. But I think for the average sane person, it's very different. And so I tend to wonder that. I think there's a possibility she is still alive today. I think that you'll probably still never see her. I don't know that she's going to kind of resurface at any point, for probably all the same reasons. If she does have a child, she wants to keep that child safe. perhaps embarrassed of the lifestyle she is. Perhaps she's entrenched in it now. You know, you've went through it for so many years yourself. Your usefulness as a product maybe expired, but now you become a facilitator. And I've mentioned the show a couple times before, but Mariana Van Zarek had done a series called, or still does a series called Trafficked, and kind of goes in the depths of it. I haven't watched any of the new season, but some of the older seasons, she'll go in the depths of it, and like we'll meet women that are like heavily involved in it, and it starts like that, like, oh, I was in like an abusive relationship that just got me sucked into this, and then I was like here, and I just sort of like embraced it to survive, and the next thing you know, like, well, you know, like I'm not doing the greatest things, but I'm surviving, and that's all I care about at this point. I'm doing what I got to do to survive. So it's just an interesting thought.
Especially when there's a kid involved, right? I think you hit the nail right on the head. I mean, look, look, if you have kids, you know that there's nothing more important in the world, if you're a good parent, than your kids. Every decision you make, everything you do, you think about your kids first, right? And so, look, as much as this woman might have missed her family and was in a very bad spot, if she had a child, you're not leaving that kid, man. Like, there's no two ways about it. And if you feel like there's no way to get you and that kid, you and your child, out of that situation, you're going to do whatever you need to do. And if that's the case, God bless her for doing that, to be with your kid. So, I think that is very plausible. Very plausible.
Amy Bradley, if you're out there and a fan of cocktails and conspiracies, we welcome you to hop on our show and share whatever it is you want to share. Brad Bradley, if you do find yourself watching this and want to join us, floor is always yours. Our platform is always welcome to talk about some of those other theories. We've got to tread carefully on that Tom Cruiseology, but anything else we are open for. And to any of our viewers, listeners on Spotify, YouTube, or anyone that follows us at conspiracyrealist.com across all of our social networks, let us know what you think. We're obviously missing a lot of the details. There are Reddit subs that are loaded with speculation. It's a lot to sift through. I can't imagine what the family's actually probably going through with all those tips and stuff that have come over the years. A lot of bullshit too, I'm sure. But if one of you guys are sort of a semi-pro expert here on this case and want to share kind of what you found, would love to hear that too. Do a real deep dive on this. True crime isn't really our subject matter here, but we thought this might be a cool exception, just given the conspiracy aspect that wraps around it. But
yeah,
Mr. Phillips, I think that's our cue to call this home. My drink is tapped, and all I got is watermelon at the bottom that I can't really drink up through my straw. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, raise your glasses to mysteries. Another episode of Cocktails and Conspiracies. Like us, follow us, subscribe, share it with a friend, and well, make sure you go to conspiracyrealist.com because YouTube keeps flagging everything again. But we are back, baby. And that Sons of Sam's episode's coming too soon.
LMFG.
Is your website still stuck in 2009 or worse, built by your cousin's friend who kind of knows WordPress?
No! God, please, no!
It's time for an upgrade. At sfx.com, we specialize in custom web design, SEO, and full-service IT solutions tailored for small businesses that are ready to scale. Whether you're just starting out or reinventing your brand, the team at sfx.com brings strategy, style, and serious tech skills to every project. Visit s-fx.com today, where small businesses get big solutions.
Visit S-F